Okay, words for level.
Testing 1 2. Testing. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Yeah. Still quite noticeable. Needs to be a lot closer. Right. Let's see if we can. It's the fan noise of the. But that should be okay.
Okay.
A little bit. Again.
Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Welcome, You're a Soul. How are you on the Basis project? Welcome you to Basis 80.
Thanks, Miles. Thanks for having me.
So you've got a very complicated set of things to discuss. Some of them very highly spiritual and very deep. So the lecture is titled The Heart Singularity. So take us away.
That's right. Yeah, some people may know me from my writing on various different websites over the last maybe 10 years or so. I run my own website, my own social network called eureka.org, which has a kind of secondary name of the Earth Heart Community, which reflects the understandings that I have that essentially the heart is a very significant part of our being, let's say, and we kind of have forgotten that generally as humanity in general, certainly in Europe and so-called civilized societies. So the Earth Art community is a system that I've made, a website designed to promote a spiritual kind of return to balance, both within ourselves and with the Earth. So I'm also on steamit.com. I blog on there quite a lot, and some other places. So it's just a quick introduction to where some people will know me from, but I kind of have had a fairly long and complicated life in a sense. I've fitted a lot in so far into my life, and so I guess I can really just give a brief summary of how I came to be here. So I began programming computers when I was about 4 years old, and my mum was a structural engineer who actually worked on the Sydney Opera House roof. So she was one of the first females in Britain to be working on computers, actually. So I was always surrounded by technology, and I come from a kind of engineering background, family with engineering backgrounds. And so as I got older, I went into computing and basically did a degree in systems engineering, and so then got to work with various different companies and groups, and saw lots of different industries from different angles, which maybe is a little bit unusual in the sense that people will typically only see one or two industries, let's say, in their career, whereas I've seen many different industries, and often from places and positions which maybe a lot of people wouldn't ever get to see. So I've picked up a lot in my life regarding what's really going on behind the scenes of our corporate world, let's say. And so when I combine with that my intentions basically to help the planet, which is a very strong intention in my life, to help us feel good and to succeed as humanity, I have a lot to say basically as a result, because many of the problems that I see today I know can be solved fairly easily, and yet we aren't doing it. So generally speaking, we aren't doing it. So I'm really inspired to try to help people to find solutions to the problems that we face, and that's what keeps me going. So I found Bases originally on YouTube as a result of searching and researching into paranormal topics, and specifically UFO ET topics, because I've had a few ET UFO type experiences of my own, and also various different kind of unusual, let's say, paranormal experiences too. So I was very happy to find Bases and to listen to all the interesting people that have been on here talking about their own experiences and sharing their insights. So I thought it'd be good to add my bit back into it all, if I can. So what I'd like to talk about mainly today, since it's a kind of a topic that's very prevalent in the media, and certainly I know Bases watchers are very interested in the whole idea of AI and the roboticization of humanity, and this has been in the news a lot recently with regards to, let's say, Saudi Arabia, where I know they're planning apparently to build a whole city that's basically populated by robots, and they've just given legal status to a robot. So we're kind of moving.
And a robot law. Robot law now. There is a law for robots.
Yes, you mentioned that earlier on to me.
And more accurately, as humans have to deal with robots, they must not disobey the robot law.
I find that slightly disturbing, but without actually doing any research into it, I won't comment. But what I can comment on is what I have seen, definitely with my own eyes. And for example, that was the an important thing to bring up is the recent conference in Saudi Arabia, where they had a robot on stage named Sophia, that they named Sophia, obviously bearing in mind that Sophia is a classical name for feminine wisdom, feminine goddess personality. And they basically stuck an emotionless robot on the stage, called her Sophia, and tried to hold her up as almost being the, well, it's not her, is it, but tried to hold it up as being the future of humanity in a way. And they literally gave this robot human legal status, bearing in mind that Saudi Arabia is not exactly the world's leading nation for women's rights and other kinds of issues relating to human rights. So I did find it very very revealing that you had a room there full of basically men, wealthy men predominantly, sitting and staring at an imaginary woman, kind of all clapping and saying, "Wow, this is amazing! This is such an achievement." And really, to me, it just felt a lot like they were essentially kind of patting themselves on the back for being able to find a woman that has no emotions and can't talk back to them. It's pretty much what I got from it. I'm sure there will be some people who think that's a bit unfair, but
Yeah, but they can talk back, and she talks back really well, as Piers Morgan found out.
well, talk back in up to a point, but you can turn her off and you can reprogram her. And I think even the creators or whoever it was, the narrator there at the conference was saying, yeah, this isn't really true AI. It's partially scripted. And as a systems kind of specialist, I could really detect that before I even said that, because it's quite obvious that the conversation they were having was pre-scripted in significant places. Yeah, so I don't really want to point too much into the people creating that robot or who they are. I don't know really anything about them, but I'm just trying to draw in the topics and themes that I'd like to talk about, which really are the contrast between the AI robotic version of reality and the actual soulful, human, heart-centered version of reality, which is something that is greatly lacking and missing on our planet, especially in the so-called civilized parts of the planet. You will ironically find, I would say, arguably more advanced cultures living in jungles than you will typically in European American cities, but simply because they're more heart-centered, and it means that although they might not have advanced technologies and these kinds of things, they actually are able to communicate and behave respectfully with each other, often in a way that's heart-centered. Not all of them, obviously, but that's something that the Western societies, as we call them, are only now really starting to learn about. So I'm grateful to all the people who have taught me about this subject over the last 15, 20 years. And I've learned a lot, so it's definitely something that I'd like to promote more. And I think in terms of the big kind of keyword when people talk about AI and robotics seems to be singularity. At least from my perspective, that's the most kind of media buzzword type of term that gets thrown around. And I just really wanted to reflect on what that is and what the alternative actually is, because I'm pretty sure I know what it is. So you've got people like Ray Kurzweil, who used to be, I'm not sure if he still is, but at one time was the lead technologist for Google, basically saying openly that the singularity is coming, and that singularity is a state where technology enters into a self-propelling, self-accelerating phase where it's able to improve itself over and over and over and over again without human interaction, and eventually becomes so advanced quite quickly actually that the technology surpasses human intelligence, meaning that in their own kind of worldview humans become obsolete, or at least most humans become obsolete, and they presumably, as the creators of the technology, get to load themselves into cyborg bodies and become kind of masters of the universe. And that's not too far off from pretty much what I was hearing from them, I think. So I'm sure a lot of people would kind of find that a bit disturbing or funny or just not very likely, but we're talking about some of the people with some of the most money on the planet, and I mean literally an almost unending amount of money coming into their business. So it's something really that should be looked at. And I know Google did buy many of the most advanced robotics companies not so long ago. And for example, Boston Dynamics, I think, is one. And they're the companies making robot bodies that literally can surpass human bodies and do somersaults and everything animals can do and so on. So it's not a joke, and it's not something to ignore. And really what I wanted to just point out is that when I was about 22, something like that, it's quite a while ago, I went through a period of what people would call spiritual awakening, and really it was just me realizing a lot of things really quickly, and from reading certain books just prompted me to put two and two together, and I found a lot of puzzle pieces very quickly. And this, bearing in mind, this was before the internet really was a big thing. It was just kind of just as that was about to explode. So I didn't really have much to go on. I just had a few books here and there that I found. I didn't really have anyone to talk about it, but I realized very quickly that everything is one, which is a kind of classic spiritual understanding. It's the truth. Everything that exists is ultimately a oneness. It's one. And so the universe, the sun, you, me, everything, although we're all individual, we all have our own shapes and forms, basically we are part of a singular oneness. So if you consider that to be truth, then we have to ask the question, why do we not already have all the answers to everything, or at least why do we not have a way to share understandings almost telepathically, automatically, if we're that connected? What's the barrier to that? And the more I started asking those questions and thinking about it, the more I found actually we are telepathically connected and we can do these things, and that's basically psychic ability. And there's a reason why lots of people don't think that that's real, and there's a reason why quite a lot of people actually know it's real and they do it on a daily basis. So that to me is one of the most fascinating subjects really to address. And I think if more people understood that we have these latent innate abilities that have been lost, less people would be more interested in becoming a robot, in short. So I think it's important that we sort of explore these subjects. And the quickest way to explain why, from my perspective, we generally don't understand these topics at all, and we've lost touch with our kind of, let's say, superhuman abilities, is because our real power comes from our heart, and our heart is injured heavily. Most people's heart is injured, it's disconnected, and they're very stuck in the brain, and they're not using the heart in the way it's meant to be used, which is as a balancing organ for the human system. So without the heart, what they're left with is just mentality and thinking, and that's the origin of large parts of our society, is very dry, kind of masculine oriented thoughts with a rejection of feminine emotion and certainly very little involvement of the heart. So I know that after 15 years of talking to people about this subject, that there are some people who will completely reject everything I'm saying, and they'll say, no, the heart's a pump for blood and that's it, you're an idiot. And I've talked to lots of those people, and I know from experience as well that when I explain to them the mechanics of the heart and how it's the bonding place for thought and emotion together, it's where masculine and feminine balance is in the human system. Generally, they don't have much to say to that, because they're not able to answer it, because they don't have the experience of going into the heart. And I think if there was one thing that humanity needs to learn more than anything else, it's how to come into our own heart. And I don't think it's an accident that the word earth is an anagram of heart. Again, which is why I named my website the Earth Heart Community. To me, they're all interlinked, interconnected, and the more you're in your heart, the more likely you are to be connected to the earth and to other people, and you're more able to actually understand what's going on, as opposed to trying to guess and assume and make calculations and all these kind of things that we get stuck doing because we don't really know what's going on fully, and we don't feel comfortable with not knowing. So instead of just accepting we don't know, we just invent something. And that to me is one of the biggest problems we're facing. So that's kind of what I see the whole robotics, cybernetics thing doing, in a sense, is they don't really know the answers to all the problems. They don't really know their origins in the universe. They don't really know their place in the universe. But they're going to have a go at fixing all the problems without knowing really what they're trying to fix. And the best solution they've come up with is to replace themselves with robots. So yeah. That's definitely something which obviously concerns a lot of people, and I think I'll just say on that now that artificial intelligence is called artificial for a reason, is because it's artificial. And proponents of it might say, well, it's artificial because it's not human, but really you can't have real intelligence without emotions being involved. And as far as I'm aware, computers don't have emotions, so therefore I would posit that artificial intelligence is only ever going to really be very limited in what it can do. So why are we bothering with it? Basically, I would suggest it's much more beneficial and productive for us to focus on our own consciousness and to move inside of us, as yoga has taught for thousands of years probably, and many teachers have taught. Really, we need to go inside of ourselves to know ourselves and to understand who we are, and from that we can balance, heal and evolve, which is really what my mission is right now, is to help people balance, heal and evolve. There's so many different directions I can go with this, really, in terms of, I mean, one point to make is it's a bit of a paradox that I have dedicated so much of my time to working with technology, and on the other hand I'm here telling everyone, well, why are we using technology, we should stop. I think my explanation for that really is that because so many people are addicted to their screens all day long, how am I going to reach them? How is anyone going to reach them unless it's through the screen? So I don't have a problem with using technology as it is to reach people, if it helps nudge them back to who they really are and to their heart, and helps us become more real and more human in the process. So that's why I'm using social networking right now. At some point I'll probably stop, but that's where I'm up to with that. And that also brings me on really to Steemit and blockchains and cryptocurrency, which is another hot topic at the moment. So it's something that a lot of people don't really understand very well, and I've actually put the last year of my life into learning it quite closely, and I've used, probably most people don't even know what Steemit is. Steemit's a website, steemit.com, steemit.com, and it's a social network a bit like Facebook and so on, but it has a cryptocurrency behind it, which is a financial system, basically a money system, a bit like Bitcoin, and it's public, it's transparent, it's not run by a central authority, and everyone that posts on this website gets paid money as a result of posting, or they can do if they get outvoted. And that's paid from inflation that's generated every day. New coins are made, and the net result of all of this is that after, I don't know, maybe 18 months of it being live, there's people on there now who are literally earning $1 to $2 to $3 million a year pay rate just from blogging. So that basically means YouTube, Facebook, all the other social networks, their days are heavily numbered, because if you can do the same thing you're doing on those sites and not getting paid anything from those sites really, or very little, and you're being censored by them as well, if you can do those things on Steemit, where you can't be censored because it's a public blockchain and you're getting paid a lot of money for doing it, why would you use Facebook or Google or YouTube? You would only use them because people are still using them who don't really know about these alternatives. So that's another important message about to people. If there's anything, if you're not interested in the heart and spirituality and these things, that's fine. But if you are a web user, at least go and check out Steemit, because it's probably going to change your life. You could do if you persist with it. So yeah, I mean, coming back to my life in terms of technology as well. At one point, around the time of 9/11, I was making banking software in central London, and I actually watched the 9/11 events happen on my screen live, and I kind of thought, I didn't really know what was going on, but I realized it was like a kind of allegedly terrorist event, and I knew this was a financial center, and I knew I was in a financial center, and basically I thought, well, maybe I'm a target, and that really woke me up, and it really made me research 9/11 in great detail, and brought me to many of the topics that brings a lot of people together, who want to help the world, when we collectively realize that basically the people, the banking system, people who run the banking system generally, the governments, a significant proportion of them are basically completely corrupt and heartless, and arguably, provably involved in massive, serious crimes. So it falls on us as individuals, in my opinion, to create solutions and systems which can replace those corrupt, controlling, enslaving systems. And I see cryptocurrency and blockchains as being one aspect to that, definitely, because it essentially means we don't have to rely on the Federal Reserve and all these other central banking hierarchies in order for us to trade using tokens. And that's the bottom, that's the kind of the crux of it all, is that as long as you've got a middleman in between you and the source of your power, or whatever you think is the source of your power, then you've got less power, because that middleman's taking some of your power. So why are we doing it? Let's just take the power back, basically, like Rage Against the Machine said. Yeah, so I can talk for an almost unlimited amount of time on these subjects, but I'm just trying to get through quite a long list of subjects in a relatively short space of time. And
well, you mentioned about computers, but they do have a consciousness. They do access our consciousness. They are conscious entities.
it's interesting, yeah. I mean, from the understanding that everything is one, that basically means that everything is a form of either consciousness or unconsciousness. And unconsciousness, in essence, could be said to be consciousness in waiting. So it's a very interesting perspective to think about, if you consider that everything could be potentially conscious. In a sense, it means everything that's alive, plants, and maybe even things we think aren't alive, could at some point evolve and develop something akin to what we would recognize as consciousness. That said, the most important thing is, for me, does the entity that we're talking about have a heart? If it has a heart, then it has feelings, it has emotions, and it has it has the capacity for full consciousness. Since computers don't have hearts, they're sadly lacking, basically, and I think the best they can do is mimic 50% of the intelligence that